their lives. So hopefully, we're hoping,
the key to all this is actually the control of the media in Scotland. Because as I said, Scottish people, like most people all over the world, are absolutely appalled by this kind of thing, child molestation. It kind of unites everybody, whatever their political views, whatever their religious beliefs. Just about everyone is appalled when they hear about these terrible things that are going on, and rightly so. But we believe that if the Scottish people as a whole, were aware of this, I think they would rise up. There have already been 2 demonstrations in Scotland, in Glasgow and Edinburgh, which have not been reported by the press, of course. And there is a very strong feeling there. And, of course, with the power of the Internet and with international support, which the Scottish people really need at this particular time, we do think that this would break the case open. If the Scottish people really become aware of what's been going on, then I think that would be the key to it all.
But I think the Scottish people are not aware that all the major newspapers, bar one, are controlled by a firm called Levy and McCrae, who are the lawyers for all these newspapers. So when the editors go to take legal advice, it's the same firm that's controlling every newspaper.
Yes, they're one of these very, very powerful law firms I mentioned who effectively control Scotland. As Anne said, they're called Levy and McCrae, and the person mainly responsible for this is a man called Peter Watson, who's the senior partner and the head of litigation. Now, Mr. Watson, in one respect, is a remarkable man, in that no one has ever voted for him, but he has more power than the First Minister of Scotland. And also, curiously enough, you probably find that 99% of people in Scotland never even heard of him. He's the man who's pulling the strings in the country. And his firm, as Anne rightly says, not only represent the Scottish government, but they also represent all of the main media outlets in Scotland, bar one. Now, even if you don't even take any notice of Hollie's case, whatever, or any of the other cases, that can obviously totally inconsistent with a free democracy, which also, of course, means a free press. It can't possibly so. So in any case, that is completely out of order.
Do you rely here also on the fact that potentially international media might cover it, German, British, or otherwise, media from around the world?
Yes, we are. Well, we've been getting some excellent support, I have to say. It's been reported, obviously, on some of the US networks. It's been reported by Italian-based radio, Dutch. It's been obviously very well supported by the Palestine Telegraph, which is a much read media outlet in the Middle East. It's even been in the Pakistan Telegraph as well.
There you go.
So and stations in Spain also. We're getting wonderful international help on this one, I have to say, and we hope that this will in some way help to bring the case to fruition. Our minimum requirements here are for the dismissal of the Lord Advocate, because obviously she is an obstacle to justice. There can be no question about that. And we've been able to prove conclusively that she has lied. And we would call for a public inquiry into this. And we're also, ourselves and other people, are also putting pressure on the British government, the British Prime Minister Gordon Brown, the leader of the opposition, David Cameron, and the leader of the third party, the Liberal Democrats, Mr. Nick Clegg. We've appealed to all of those in the circumstances to actually act on this terrible, terrible case and at the very least call for a public inquiry.
Anne, you wanted to add something?
Yes, well, I just wanted to say that this Levy and McCrae also represent Alicia Angelini, and this is being paid out of the public purse.
Yes. I also can tell you, Henrik, that I've discovered a few other things since I've been released from the police custody, and that we're very lucky in that we do have people in positions of authority who are as appalled by all this as you and I and everyone else is, and we do get very good information, I have to say, very reliable information of what's been going on. Now, one of the things that I discovered was when the case was stopped the second time in 2000, the investigation again for allegedly insufficient evidence, and there would be insufficient evidence, the police can't be bothered to interview anybody, then, curiously enough, this wasn't stopped by the Procurator Fiscal in Aberdeen, a man called Mr. Stephen McGowan, who you would normally expect to be the person to make the judgment. He would not make a judgment, but instead passed it on to the Chief Crown Office in Edinburgh, where the person in charge is Mrs. Alicia Angelini. Mm-hmm. He didn't mention that in his letter that she had blocked it, but in fact I pursued this, and I regularly rang the Crown Office in Edinburgh trying to sort of establish some sort of breakthrough, and eventually I was put in touch with a lawyer called Catherine Harper, who is head of the sexual abuse section in Mrs. Angelini's office. And on the 18th of December, I questioned her pretty strongly, I have to say, and she was getting more and more agitated and more concerned. And I said, look, I want to know who is the person who is responsible for stopping this investigation? Somebody's made the decision to stop it. Who is it? And eventually she cracked and she said, it's the Lord Advocate. I said, thank you very much.
How about that?
Also, the information, that is one thing. Also, the information that I've found since my arrest and my being charged was that my arrest and the charges against me were entirely and directly orchestrated, again, by Mrs. Angelini, the Lord Advocate.
What do you think would happen if the case were opened up and a lot of people would consequently be drawn into this situation, and they could be forced to resign or quit and so forth? We're talking about an awful lot of people here, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're talking about a lot of people, and herein is our biggest problem. So many prominent people are going to go down with this. There's and that's what we know of. We don't know if the problem is even more widespread and includes perhaps other groups of people of which we have no knowledge at the moment.
Yes. So if we just kind of, if you will, speculate a little bit about the situation that we're potentially facing here, not in Scotland only, but in other countries around the world as well, and if I can get either of you takes on this in terms of what it is that drives this, if it's a sickness, why does the sexual abuse and pedophilia continues? I mean, this week, for instance, we've had similar stories coming out from the Catholic Church, both in Germany, I think even in Ireland and in other places as well, and how the Pope has been allegedly safeguarding certain people who have been involved in this, and they've been trying to put them under certain programs to rehabilitate these priests and what have you. But does anyone of you want to comment on that? What it is that drives this? Is it the cycle of abuse that we can see that it's passing down through families in one way, or do you have any take?
I personally think that, yes.
You do?
I do think that this has been going on for, decades.
Yes. And,
because of maybe the internet, because of how the sort of joining up, the world's not such a big place now. There's more communication between countries. It's making people, very much aware, and it's more a subject that people are prepared to speak about now, whereas, even 10, 20 years ago, it was a subject that was never, ever spoken about. It was never spoken about in schools. It was never, it just wasn't spoken about,
Yeah.
I think one of the curious things, I think, as Anne said, I think that there is certain sort of circumstantial evidence that these kind of, the people who perpetrate these things were themselves victims at some point.
Yes,
exactly. It's gone down through families over years, and they live this double life of pretending to be living normally, but cannot at any point discuss things that happen behind closed doors in their homes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Very good point. Yeah.
The only thing I think that is everyone finds disturbing is that the overwhelming majority of people, wherever you are, as I've mentioned before, no matter what country you're in or what your background is or your political beliefs, are united in being appalled by this. And it must only be a very small minority. I can't believe it's anything more than a small minority of people indulge in these terrible crimes. So what puzzles me is how do these people manage to hush it up when there are relatively so few of them?
Yes.
And it appalls all the rest of us. How do they get away with it?
And also, why does it seem, at least at this point, that a lot of these people who are involved in these heinous acts are actually part of the establishment, politically or police or law as well? That's obviously another question. Why is that? Is it some kind of...
Well, I have been told by someone, who has, sort of studied this for, a long, long time, that, these families are, sort of tell their children, like, you're going to be a policeman, you're going, so the thing is just, perpetuated, year after year, a decade after decade. That actually